water?
I still got this spicy left.
I'm anxious.
Stop it. Don't be anxious.
I am anxious.
Okay, be anxious.
I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
Because I have a new movie that is added to my I never want to watch it again list that you recommended.
Which one?
Possum.
I did not. I've never seen that.
Yes, you have. You recommended it.
Oh, with the spider?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now I remember. With the, yeah. I forgot what it was called. Yeah, it was pretty disturbing. Well, yeah, what'd you think of it?
I hated it. I hated every single second of it. I thought it was unpleasant and heavy-handed. And like, I don't know, not even halfway into the movie. Immediately into the movie, I was like, this feels like film school pretentious art. Like I've watched too much David Lynch. That's what it feels like.
It definitely had that vibe. Definitely film school pretentious. That's funny.
And
yeah.
Really early on, like 15 minutes into the film, I was just like, this feels like a metaphor for, I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil it, but this feels like a metaphor for what it was a metaphor for.
Yeah.
And then halfway through the film, I was like, this is torture. I looked up the Wikipedia of the plot and I was like, okay, I was right. And then I asked Ben, are you enjoying this? And he was like, I can tell you aren't. But he wanted to keep watching it. And I was like, okay, fine, let's keep watching it. I mean, honestly, he would have stopped watching it if I had. But I was like, no, it's fine. Okay. I don't know why I did that. That last scene was so disturbing to me. I did not get over it for a few days.
Yeah. Let's do like a welcome to horror/stories sort of thing.
Sounds good. I think, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
To me. I'll follow your lead.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Horror/Stories. We have a phenomenal.
You have to say who you are.
Oh man, I'm Maddie. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm here.
Start over.
No, we're leaving this in.
Okay, great. I'm Sarah,
and we are two siblings who like to watch horror movies and talk about them.
And today we have with us a very special guest who I'm very excited to be talking to and excited to introduce you to. So our guest today is Nenia Campbell, who is an extremely talented, multi-published author, book reviewer, and kind of a notorious shitposter. You've been reviewing books for more than 10 years, and you have more than 20,000 followers on Goodreads.
Whoa.
And your book review blog, which is called Readosaurus Reviews, which if anyone follows you on Goodreads, you can read your reviews first on your blog. So that's kind of exclusive. And your latest release, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Sine Qua Non, came out in October of 2024, and you are currently working on a variety of new projects, including several taboo and Gothic horror romances. So welcome, Nenia.
Welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and making me sound so much more impressive than I really am.
Can you tell us how many books have you published already?
That's a difficult question because not all of them are still in circulation, but if you count the ones that I've unpublished, probably over 30.
Oh my gosh.
That is over 30 more than I have published.
And one of the things I'm really excited to ask you about that was kind of how we met, but you started writing like your first series. Well, I don't even know if that was your first series, but the Horrorscape series in high school. And that obviously contains a lot of horror elements. So first of all, yeah, would you mind telling us a little bit about your writer's journey? And also, what would you consider yourself a horror lover, or what is your origin story when it comes to horror? Because also just in general, there are a lot of your books deal with themes of fear. I mean, you have a Scream-inspired book.
I do. I love Scream. So I started writing when I was a little kid. I did some horror when I was younger. I actually wrote a story that got me a phone call home because my teacher was so disturbed. And that was in 4th grade. I do like horror. I got into horror like the way a lot of people do, from like Goosebump books by R.L. Stine. Mm-hmm. I am a scaredy cat though, so like I can't do anything that's like too scary, and I want it to have a happy ending, which is kind of like how I gravitated to horror romance, because then I can kind of have my horror cake and eat it too, because I get the thrills and the chills, but like my favorite people don't die in the end.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of things that are really scary, one of the scariest things for me to this day, like in the Goosebump series, there's like some sort of story about a kid who puts on a Halloween mask and like gets like trapped in the Halloween costume or something.
The haunted mask.
Yes. Yeah. That freaked me out so much when I was a little kid. Like I still get like chills thinking about that. I'm glad that you know that reference. Also, I do you mind if I ask, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but like about the story that got you a call home from your teacher? Like I'm so curious about this.
Yeah, I don't remember it super well, but basically it was like the origin of merry-go-rounds. And I was like writing about how when a horse is gunned down in battle, it dies, but then like they fill the bullet holes with like gemstones and like ribbons, and then they reanimate its corpse and put it on the merry-go-round, and like that's how you get carousel. And
the lore.
That's really creative.
My teacher was pretty conservative and old-fashioned. She was like, I mean, to little kids, like everyone looked old, but I think she was about 70. And so she was like, there is something very wrong with this child. And so immediate phone call.
Oh my gosh. That's so wild.
Do I remember you saying that you're going to try to incorporate that story into one of your future works?
I might. It would not be beneath me to do that. I would definitely love to recycled.
Oh my gosh. I hope it's super successful so that, I don't know, you get your, I don't know, redemption from the teacher call.
Yeah.
I think you've gotten your redemption.
Well, clearly.
But yeah, so kind of related to what we've been talking about, fear is a core element in many of your books. What draws you to that theme? And also, I should say for myself right now, I told Maddie that we could switch off asking questions, but I realized I haven't done that. I tend to talk a lot.
Oh, no, that's okay. So, you can ask these ones, because I feel like you're more in the, I was about to say the reading side of it, but like the books side of things.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like fear is a pretty universal theme that everyone can relate to, and there's like different kinds of fear too. Like there's like the fear of monsters, there's the fear of the unknown, there's the fear of like, you know, being in immediate peril. And so I feel like as someone who has anxiety and often experiences like low wavelength fear all the time, it's hard not to put it in my books. But also I feel like it's something that people can really relate to. And when you have a character who's afraid and like they overcome that fear and it propels them to take actions that develop their character because it's pushing them out of their comfort zone, I feel like that can be very cathartic.
Well said.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think it was really interesting how you navigate that theme in your book, Little Deaths, because the main character, the protagonist, Donnie, is a former actress. How would you describe her movies?
I based a lot of her movies off of like the pulp horror novels of Roger Corman, but also like 70s grindhouse in general, just because I feel like the direct to video VHS cassette boom is something that not a lot of people talk about now, because I think in the discourse on TikTok, a lot of them are too young to remember. But I remember going to the VHS store and seeing all those tapes. And so I was very curious, like, what would be like to be an actress who was famous for those sorts of movies, and then her career kind of just dropped off when everything started going to DVD and they weren't really making those sort of mass-produced low-budget videos anymore.
That's a really cool conceptual exploration. Can you say the name of the book again, just because I want to read it later?
Oh yeah, Little Deaths by Nenia Campbell.
All right, cool.
I own a copy, so I can lend it to you.
I'll have to borrow it.
And within that book, Donnie starts encountering things that have happened in her movies start happening to her in real life.
Yeah, I thought that would be pretty terrifying too, because like I feel like if you're a method actor, and like in her case, she really was immersed in some of her roles. She actually really was genuinely afraid of some of the things that happened to her in those movies. So I thought it would be quite scary if you had this body of work that like kind of pushed you to your like emotional limits, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with like the real life version of it. Like as an author of horror, I think that would be like absolutely terrifying. So it was fun to write that happening to someone who was not me.
Absolutely.
So we touched on this briefly, but do you consider yourself easily scared?
Yes, I am. Oh my God. I still remember I watched The Ring with my friend in her mountain cabin, actually set in the same place as one of my other books, like the Sierras. And she went to go to the bathroom, like when we were getting to the scary part where they like find out like the secrets of like the origin of the well. And this bitch, she dropped ice cubes down the back of my shirt.
No.
And I was like, oh my God, I screamed so loud. I was like, my time has come. The well girl has found me. She's just cackling. And I'm an easy mark when it comes to fear, okay?
What in particular, like, do you find scary? Like, what concepts or themes, like, do you find particularly scary?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess, psychological horror, because I feel like, again, it's like the universal theme of like having something go wrong in your life and not being able to quite pinpoint what it is. I find that fascinating. I think it's kind of a real life parallel to like what anxiety feels like if you don't have it. I feel like, yes. So you get it. I feel like uncanny valley stuff really freaks me out. So I can't do dolls, robots, animatronics, mirrors.
Mirrors.
I feel like my biggest like kind of freak out is like, what if you look in the mirror and like something looks back that isn't you?
Oh my gosh.
Which is what Oculus is about.
I've seen that one.
I watched that.
One.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so many things I want to talk about and ask you, and I feel like my brain is being pulled in so many different directions at once, so I'm just going to go with one thing. This was not a prepared question, but we were just talking about, what was the movie we were talking about? Stop motion, because I think Maddie was interested in stop motion, and you had mentioned you had started watching it and stopped watching it. So I think you just wanted to ask about
I just wanted to know a little bit about like, whatever brief part of it you watched, because it looked really scary to me when I saw the trailer, and I was kind of wanting to watch it for the podcast.
I don't want to watch it.
I didn't watch it. So what I did was I love her. There's this girl on TikTok who will watch scary movies, and then she gives you the summaries with all of the triggers, so you know what's going to happen, but like you don't have to watch it yourself if you don't want to.
Gotcha.
And the themes of like, I guess there's like SA and cannibalism. Like I can't do that. Yeah. Anytime a movie kind of verges into like torture porn, or it's just people getting like, I can't.
That's kind of my no-goes for horror movies that I just don't really have an interest in watching is, SA or really infant harm. Like, I don't want to... I don't really want to see that. I think unless there is... I don't think you can ever justify, like, harming an infant in a horror movie. I just don't think that that's ever justified. I think unless there is a really compelling reason, like it's essential, it just doesn't... I think you can make a good movie without those. There are so many other things you could do.
I think we were talking about this on the last episode too, but SA is like not... That's kind of like a hard line for me too, where I'm just like, it's not a subject material that I feel like, especially the way it's used in a lot of horror where it is used, it's really callously done, and I don't like that. I try to avoid those.
That's something I actually liked about today's theme movie, Jennifer's Body. I was so afraid it was going to be like a gang SA situation. And the fact that it wasn't, I was like, oh my God, thank goodness. Because I was like, the dread. I was like, no.
Quite the opposite, actually.
So should we talk about the movie? Because I have a feeling that this conversation is just going to jump around because I'm just so excited to talk to you, and
same.
So much to say. But so the movie we watched, we're still talking about the theme of possession, and we watched Jennifer's Body, which has become a cult classic film, and I think it is such a fascinating movie. I think Maddie and I both happened to watch the same interview, and I have a feeling you probably did too. The interview between Megan Fox and Diablo Cody.
Whoa, that interview, like, I mean, I liked the movie when I watched it, and that interview made me like it even more. But we can get into that.
But for people who aren't familiar with the film, it was really poorly marketed. I think it came out in 2009 because I remember I was working at the grocery store, and I remember it being advertised in all the magazines, and it was during peak emo time, and the soundtrack had like Panic at the Disco and Paramore and everyone you can think of. So it was like a big deal movie. But I never saw it back in the day, and I don't think I even saw it until this year. And just hearing about how it was really mismarketed, and it's made by, the screenplay was written by Diablo Cody, the same person who wrote Juno, and has written so many films, Lisa Frankenstein included. I want to see that one.
It's so good.
Is it good? Okay.
It's so good.
But it was around this time that Transformers came out, and so there was a lot of it seemed like the people who were marketing the movie really wanted to capitalize off of Megan Fox's appearance, where to the point where in this interview, Diablo Cody is saying that the marketing idea, that was not her idea, was just Megan Fox hot. Literally 3 words.
I remember watching the commercials, and like that was the impression I came away with, and like I just really never had any interest in watching the movie at the time that it came out, like specifically because of how it was advertised.
They marketed it kind of like going back, it was like a 70s exploitation film. I'm like, okay, so it's going to be like boobs and gore and nothing else. No thank you.
Right. And like also just, I mean, the public image of Megan Fox at that time and the way that she was being like typecast, you know, especially following Transformers, was just like so two-dimensional. And so I just kind of like assumed that it was going to kind of follow in the footsteps of that. But anyways, I'm kind of blabbering on. Go ahead.
It seems like that's what a lot of people thought. That's what the marketing team thought. That's what Megan Fox said she kind of thought when she was offered the role. And at first she was no longer, she was kind of just like, I guess I've been typecast, so I guess I'll just take these roles, because she was just getting so much vitriol from the public. And then, of course, because the movie was so completely marketed to the incorrect audience, when it's really kind of a queer-coded, feminist, like, I don't know, horror comedy.
On the industry.
Commentary on the industry. Yeah. And it's found its market a lot more now. And it's especially interesting to hear, again, in the same interview that we'll have to link, Megan Fox talking about how in the movie, oh my gosh, we got to do a 60-second recap. Yeah. But in the movie, you know, this band basically sacrifices her character, and she felt so that they can become famous, and she felt like that was what was actually happening to her, was that her health was being not taken into account, her well-being, and that people were just using her, like really literally objectifying her for their own gain. Mm-hmm. So let's do the 60-second recap. Nenia, do you want to try doing it, or otherwise we'll flip a coin?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess the cheating version would be like,
wait, hang on 1 second. We'll pull up a timer.
Yeah, also, for the record, you may be a very confident 60-second recapper. We certainly aren't. And also, if it's bad, that's kind of like the fun. So much like many horror movies.
Yeah.
So whenever you're ready, I'll give you a on your mark, get set, go. And then you can take off. Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
On your mark, get set, go.
Well, I guess the super short version would be like, maybe the real demon possession is the friends we made along the way. Plus, don't date boys in bands. But basically, it's like there's these two girls. They're best friends. One's popular, one's nerdy. The pretty popular one goes off with these boys. You think something bad is going to happen, and it does, but it's not the bad thing that you think is going to happen. A whole bunch of boys get unalived. There's some queer awakening, coming of age sort of stuff, and then there's a surprise ending.
You have 42 seconds. Do you want to add anything?
It was really good, and you should watch it. And I thought it was really fascinating how she doesn't talk about, Megan Fox doesn't talk about that movie the way she talks about the Transformers movie. She seems genuinely like really proud of it and really involved with it, and I really like that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We are just now at 60 seconds. I gotta say, you're the second guest that we've had on this podcast, unless we count Ben, which we do because we love Ben. I think you nailed it in
40 seconds.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like our guests are much better at 60-second recaps than we are. We get like so flustered, and we're like, trying to end all these. But that was a great summary. Yeah, and plus some extra commentary as well, which I appreciate.
I do really love about that movie too is that they're taking this person who's kind of a sex symbol, especially coming off of Transformers, and they are just letting her be grimy and feral. She's sitting on the floor eating a chicken with her bare hands. She's puking like
zombie juice.
Like she gets covered in blood and all sorts of dirt, and I loved that she could just do that. Like, it wasn't about like, you know, it wasn't really about the male gaze, I guess.
It kind of reminded me of that cameo Paris Hilton got to do in Supernatural, where they're like, we're going to like let you play like a succubus who's only like pretending to be a sex symbol, and you get to eat people. Like, I really like that subversion. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, speaking of Supernatural, that definitely, like, just, I guess, like, the film style and the weird low frame rate, like, flashbacks, like, it's slow-mo, super low frame rate, and there was a lot of stuff that kind of evoked, like, Supernatural and just that era of, like, film for me. So I watched the first, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes of this with my partner, and we were talking about just like the experience of being transported back to 2009, which I'm glad that we're not there anymore. What a strange and awful time. But yeah, like, were you brought back, like, I don't know, to like late 2000s, and what was the experience for you of like revisiting that era.
And one thing I want to say is that Nenia is actually really good at one thing that really stands out to me about your writing is that a lot of it does take place in the aughts or whatever time period it's set in. You do a really amazing job of embodying that time period. You really take your reader and you take us back in time. So I think you're quite familiar with being just immersed in that sort of like period.
Aw, thank you. Yeah, I think one of the hallmarks of like the 2000s was like for me like the hypocrisy, because like on the one hand, you have all these very offensive like things that people were just saying, and it was in quotations totally okay. Like some people obviously didn't think it was okay, but no one listened to them, which was bad. But then also like you have this idea where like, oh, we're like a progressive post-feminist society now. We don't really need to worry about that anymore. And so it was like, I read this book actually recently called like Ranch Culture, which was about like the feminist chauvinist pigs, like women who were basically taught that like, oh, it's feminist to be a sex symbol, like it's okay to be in the male gaze if you put yourself there. And so people were basically being like, oh, you're winning the game, but actually they didn't realize that they were like the players being played. And so I feel like that was a hallmark of the 2000s, is just like this idea that, oh, we've done all these great things, look how far we've come, and we're actually in some ways taking steps backwards.
Totally. Yeah, 100% agree with that.
I think let's explore how possession looked in this movie, because what were you saying, Maddie? What were you saying a while back? Possession deals a lot of the times with themes of love and resentment.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So it's been kind of interesting. We've been looking at how possession looks in a variety of different films, and it varies. It varies quite widely. So I guess, what do you think? How did possession look in this movie? Who was possessed, and what was the point of that possession?
Yeah. So like, I guess there's the superficial like demonic possession element, but I also felt like that was kind of an allegory for like her obvious attraction to like her best friend. And you could kind of argue that kind of being forced to be closeted and present as a very heteronormative stereotype of like male gaze attraction was literally consuming Megan Fox's character. And like she clearly wanted to be with her friend but couldn't, and like in the end that kind of ended up destroying her. But also like maybe also empowering her friend too, when she realized that she could embrace what her friend couldn't.
Wow, I would love to just hear more about that, because I think when I was watching the trailer, like when I was younger, this is like before I like was out as like a bisexual person, and I remember like specifically the scene in the trailer where she's like, I go both ways, and it's like, you know, very much like in the trailer portrayed as, oh, this is like, you know, just cheap, you know, sexy, whatever, you know, male gazy, like yeah, male gazy, the only form of acceptable queerness is the one that is like for the male gaze. And I remember even like before I really understood like my identity and like, you know, came out or had any friends who were bisexual even, being very put off by like that scene in the trailer specifically. So like, you know, now that I've seen the movie, I know that it is like a more good faith exploration of queerness, and just to hear you talk about it in that way is like, I don't know, it's I feel like I'm doing retcon on my childhood impression of this movie, so thank you for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had the same thought as you when I heard the line. I was like, oh, okay, so they're playing that game. But watching it, I was really impressed at how progressive it was. I mean, if you take out like, you know, the R word and some of like the bad stereotypes they kind of fling around, it really does feel like a movie that could be made today.
And this, yeah, I mean, very much ahead of its time in my opinion, because this was pre-Me Too.
Yeah, this is pre-Me Too. Yep. A lot pre-Me Too.
Yeah.
And that was interesting too. Again, I really highly recommend. There's a 2019 interview. I think it's on ET, which I think means Entertainment Today, between Diablo Cody and Megan Fox. And they talk about that too, how Megan Fox was really, even at the time, having to deal with these. I mean, it's not new. Like, the reason the Me Too movement came about, even if that was later in the 2000s, was because of issues that had been happening for decades, for a very, very long time. But I think Megan Fox is talking about dealing with those issues kind of publicly, and people treating her like victim blaming. And how even now she considers herself a feminist, but doesn't feel like there's room for her in the feminist movement because of how she is perceived.
Just like back to the theme of possession. I mean, in the last movie we watched, it was like more themes of like cultural possession, of like, you know, colonizers kind of coming in and possessing a culture to extract its resources. But like, you know, even the name of this movie, Jennifer's Body, right, is like a reference to how like the image of like the female body is taken and possessed by like the film industry, you know, kind of at odds with the values of the people who own those bodies and are those bodies. So like, yeah, that definitely makes me think of possession and the way that like the industry is kind of like the demonic entity that possesses women, especially at that time. But yeah, still today, obviously.
I was just going to say, I think it also speaks to like the dehumanization of like objectifying someone too, because a body is just an object and it doesn't have agency. And I think calling it Jennifer's Body rather than Jennifer makes a big statement about like who actually has like power and agency in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a question for both of you. I guess for me too is,
Hashtag. Sorry.
You suck. Would you recommend this movie, and who would you recommend it to? I mean, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because I guess we went through our questions pretty quickly, but there's more to say about this movie. Yeah, is there anything else either of you want to say about the movie before we talk about if it's something you would recommend?
Well, I guess like briefly, I just wanted to say I learned a lot about like Megan Fox and her career and her upbringing, like in the process of researching this. If anybody hears like the name Megan Fox and immediately thinks, yeah, whatever, Transformers sex symbol, like I encourage you to do a deeper dive into her story. And, you know, she was like raised in like a very like religious Pentecostal home, you know, in like some really unpleasant circumstances, and just her career arc has been super fascinating for me to learn about. So I definitely encourage people to watch this movie and also just like check out her other work. She's really a fascinating person, and
I think an underrated actress.
Absolutely underrated actress. And she has a new movie that just came out that maybe we'll watch at some point.
You said it's on Netflix?
It's on Netflix. What's it called?
Subservience?
Yeah.
Ooh.
She plays did you say a robot?
Yeah, it looks kind of like Ex Machina vibes, where like, I don't know.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
yeah, I would definitely check it out.
Sounds scary.
Totally.
I also would just say about this movie is it's really funny. There are some jokes that really did not age well, but some moments there during the sacrifice, it's so funny. It's horrifying. Like that, her being transported in the van and the actual fact of the sacrifice, it is scary. It is really scary, and you can tell that she's scared. But at the same time, they really managed to navigate that balance between fear and humor, which I think is really impressive, because they're the jokes that these band members are making while they're trying to figure out the sacrifice is really funny. And then the banter between Jennifer and her friend Needy, It is so funny as well at the point where it's the end of the movie. Needy has stabbed Jennifer through the stomach with or someone has, with this huge pole. And Jennifer's response is, "Do you have a tampon?"
Oh my gosh. There's so many good one-liners. Like, also they mentioned this in the interview too, but her getting stabbed in the heart and being like, "Ah, my tit," and then Needy saying, "No, your heart," and all the such a funny moment, but also the Diablo
Cody
Diablo Cody saying yeah, everyone's gonna see this and see tits on the screen, and I just want to remind everyone who's watching she's stabbed in the heart. Yeah.
Okay, so would you recommend this movie?
I would. I think I would recommend it to people who like kind of gentle parody meta slashers like Valentine, the one with David Boreanaz, Scream, and Happy Death Day. I feel like if you like those three movies, Jennifer's Body is going to really appeal to you.
It's been so long since I saw Scream, and now I really want to see those other ones you're talking about too, Happy Death Day and Valentine.
What's the one that also makes me think of what's the one where they go to the summer camp and it's a musical slasher?
Oh, I remember what you're talking about.
Whatever, we can figure it out later. If you know what that movie it is, write it in the comments, I guess. Subscribe and like.
Okay, Maddie, would you recommend this movie?
I would absolutely recommend it. Probably the same demographic that Nenia said, people who get a kick out of the over the top kind of campy slasher.
I agree with all of that. I think it's fun. It's a good time, but also it is very 2009. So just keep that in mind when you watch this movie.
Right. Yeah. give it some 2009 grace.
Okay. Do you have any other movie recommendations, possession related or other, I guess, specifically horror, or books that you want to shout out? And especially about books, which of your books, there's so many good options, might appeal to, I guess, people who are interested in exploring, I guess, fear. That was so well said.
That's like a 3-part combo breaker of a question. Okay, so for movies, my favorites are Gothic horror, vampire horror, and campy 70s horror. So for Gothic horror, Crimson Peak and Marrowbone. For vampire horror, Lost Boys and Fright Night. And for cheesy 70s horror, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers with a young Jeff Goldblum.
Yes.
And no one has seen this, but it's called Phantasm. And it's a horror movie that was 1979, very low budget, where this guy finds out that this funeral home is doing super shady paranormal shit.
Ooh.
I feel like I'm adding so many movies to my list of movies.
Yes. As for books, again, love Gothic horror romance. B. Northwick has a book I love called The Cruel Dark. It's a Gothic romance set in the 1920s with Celtic folklore. I love it so much. I just got Grave Horror by Karina Halle.
I've been hearing stuff about it. Yeah. Are you reading it?
I haven't read it yet, but it looks good. And I love mushroom horror. I love what moves the dead. So I'm excited to read Grave Matter.
Can you tell me what mushroom horror is? It's a genre.
Yeah, mushroom horror.
Evil mushrooms and rotting and the forest is out to get you. I guess it's also called botanical horror.
Okay, I'm so on
beautiful.
board.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And let me see. Another book on my list that I haven't read yet is The Poisoner by I.B. Ophelia and The Darkest Waltz by Ashley King.
And I would just like to shout out that you have always the best book recommendations. So anyone listening should go and go and join the other 20,000 people on Goodreads and follow your reviews.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then, which of your books, I think a lot of your books really explore this theme, especially the intersection of like fear and desire. But I would definitely recommend the Horrorscape series. I love every single book in that series.
Oh, yay.
They're all so different, which I think is so much fun. I sometimes try to think which is my favorite, and I genuinely don't think I could pick because they're all fun in their own way, or just fascinating in their own way. But oh my God, I was going to ask a question about Horrorscape. Oh, how I found Horrorscape was through an Instagram reel that you made where you were saying that someone said that I think the third or fourth book in the Horrorscape series was the bleakest book they ever read.
Yeah. And also I had trouble marketing it because with a lot of dark romance, there's like a redemption arc. But like when I set out to write this book, I asked myself the question, like, what if you wrote a horror, like romance kind of where the hero just was not redeemable? And like, would people still romanticize him? And the answer is yes, they would. Absolutely, they would. Like, what do you think? So it kind of started out as like a thought experiment, and I was genuinely surprised at how many people loved and continue to love that hero.
And you actually are working on a fifth book in the series that features a true crime podcast.
Yeah. And it has the, quote, hero's brother as the love interest of that one.
Ooh.
So Horrorscape, definitely recommend that series. And then Little Deaths, I can't recommend any of your books highly enough. They are really fantastic, but Little Deaths is an obvious choice if you are a horror fan because it is a Scream-inspired horror romance. Yeah.
I'm just going to have to keep reading all of the new ones until the merry-go-round story gets referenced. So I encourage everyone else to join me.
I have to find a book to put that in now.
No pressure.
Raise the Blood also falls into that category because that is your Gothic, which I think is so well executed.
Oh, you know, the funny thing is people kept comparing it to Crimson Peak, and I had never seen Crimson Peak until I saw like the reviews for my book, which you're not supposed to look at, but I did anyway. And I loved it so much, but Crimson Peak is not a romance. So my book is, and I feel like now I market it as like Crimson Peak if it was like a romance with a very happy ending.
Nice.
Because that's one of the things I don't love about some Gothic horror movies is that a lot of them feel like tragedies. And I want them to be happy at the end.
And speaking of Gothic and your works and new things, can you tell us a little bit about your new Gothic horror novel?
Yeah, so I'm working on two. One is a companion book to Raise the Blood, written from the point of view of the creepy family, and specifically their younger son, who's the love interest. And then I'm working on another one called Love Every Thorn, which is, I want it to be kind of like all of the House of Usher-y, but like, again, with a happy ending and no incest, because I don't personally write that.
Really briefly circling back to something I mentioned at the beginning. So you've studied psychology?
Yes. I have a degree in it.
Well done. I'm curious about the interplay of your degree and like your studies and your writing. Like, for context, I'm dating a therapist and
nice.
So like just kind of peeking over her shoulder at the stuff that she's learning and hearing her nerd out about human psychology has definitely changed the way that I consume the horror genre. Like, I feel like I used to just kind of be like, I like getting scared, this is fun. And now I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so much metaphor and like, I don't know, just so much juiciness there. Can you just talk however much you want about the psychological aspects of your writing and also how that informs your relationship to the genre?
Oh wow, however much I want. That's a dangerous permission.
We might have to do another
guess,
episode.
I honestly, you could make a Patreon series of just you talking about whatever you're interested in, and I would watch that.
I would spend money on that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's such a nice compliment. I should consider that. So I guess for me, when I started writing dark romance, I noticed there was like a kind of common theme where people would just gloss over the horrible stuff that happened to the protagonist, kind of like in their rush to get the couple together. But like from my studies, and I'm not a doctor, I don't have a doctorate, so I'm like by no means an expert, but like in my opinion, like psychology is very cause and effect. Like you can't have someone undergo an action and then not have them process what happened and maybe even dwell over what happened. I feel like with dark romance, especially, like you're creating a very claustrophobic and like phobia filled environment where they're exposed to all of these horrible things. And if you don't have the protagonist react to and respond to those things, to me, it's not an interesting story and it doesn't feel realistic. I know like one of the things that drive some authors crazy is like saying like it's not realistic, and they're like, but it's fiction. And it's like, that's true, but you still kind of have to follow the rules of the world that you're setting. And if you don't do that, then I feel like it does feel unrealistic.
Mm-hmm. I've heard people criticize like, I guess like the horror genre as like being escapist. Mm-hmm. And I don't find it to be escapist so much as like a way of processing, I don't know, like finding novel ways and novel metaphors like to process mental illness. Like, I mean, specifically for me, like we talked a little bit like about anxiety, you know, and like I find it's really hard to explain the experience of having really bad anxiety to somebody, but like so much of like horror like captures that experience so well. So I guess, do you feel that like horror or dark romance is escapism, or is it like a different way of like, and sorry, you can add on to this question too if you want, but like is it just like a different approach to like processing something through imaginative ways?
Yeah, that brings up something that frustrates me, and I know that you've written about this, where sometimes I'll tell people that I'm interested in horror movies and that the reaction I get is just like, you know, oh, it must be nice to watch that instead of, you know, paying attention to the world. And I'm just like, just because I like horror movies doesn't mean I don't know what's going on in the world, doesn't mean I'm not tuned in. And I think romance readers get that a lot too. And the people in the communities that I am in who are fans of genre fiction, whether that be in books or in movies, are very tuned in. Like, and I also can't think of if we're talking about horror movies, the last horror movie I saw that wasn't about something deeper, like that was not super, I can't think of a superficial horror movie that I've seen recently.
Yeah, me neither.
I guess we didn't really turn that into a question for you. Sorry. We're just like ranting.
I feel like for something to be escapist, there has to be like a degree of idealism. So like I feel like romance and fantasy are escapist because, you know, like you're usually going to like somewhere that's maybe better than like where you are now. I feel like for a horror, it's more cathartic. Like you have the tension, like the buildup of the bad feelings, and then like the release when you get the payoff. And I feel like for some people, it's almost like, oh God, what's that? Like exposure therapy, where like you're experiencing like fear, but you're like in a controlled and safe environment. And so you have these feelings and you're afraid, but nothing bad is going to happen to you. So you also feel like the security and comfort. In the dark romance community, I've been told that, like, you know, for some SA survivors, dark romance is like a useful tool for them in this way as well, because you have those same feelings that kind of mirror what you felt before, but like it's a healing tool. And like, obviously you would want to talk through this with like a therapist and be very cautious. But like, it allows them to experience those feelings in a safe place where no one can hurt them. And also they have the luxury of knowing it's a happy ending. So this person that they're inserting into like is going to be okay.
Yeah, that makes me think of like, I was hearing recently about there's like a type of therapy that exists that's like specifically Dungeons and Dragons therapy, where like you're like processing your emotions and feelings like in the context of Dungeons and Dragons. And it just makes me think about like the power of, I don't know if this is like the right word, but like
your imagination,
play, I guess, or like play doesn't really apply to like the topics that we're talking about, because I don't think anybody finds that playful. But you know, like stepping into a character that's like just removed enough from yourself that you can actually engage with the emotions that are kind of coming up. I think that's a really powerful tool, and I don't know, it's cool to talk to somebody who actually like writes, you know, right? Generates like those kind of stories. And like full disclosure, Sarah's read your works, I have not, but I am definitely going to, because yeah, you're really cool, and I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. You guys are really cool too. I'm so excited to be here having these talks.
Well, we've taken a lot of your time this evening, but I want to ask before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to plug? And where else on the internet can people find you? And do you think it's possible for me to ask just one question and not three?
That's a 3-part question.
Wow. I guess check out my my Gothic romance, Raise the Blood. I'm so proud of it. It's, I think, the best thing I've written.
It's
and
really
if you like vampire horror, I have one called Through a Glass Darkly, which is really steeped in like 90s and 2000s nostalgia. So those are the two I would recommend to horror lovers.
And I would also especially recommend Through a Glass Darkly to people who enjoy Jennifer's Body, because the humor in that book is so excellent. I will never forget the sword fight between the villain and the protagonist. And I can't remember, like the villain is so much stronger, so outpowers the protagonist.
But he thinks he's being fair. He's like, I'm doing you a favor. You will die with dignity.
Yeah, I think people will really enjoy the dialogue. It's so quotable.
Thank you.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead. I think you were about to answer the question I was about to ask.
Where they can find
yes,
me, but
please. No, I was just going to ask, like, where can we find you? And also anything else you want to plug. This is your moment.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if you want to find me, I'm on Goodreads as Nenia Campbell. I'm an author. So if you type my name into the bar, like, I'm right there. You can find me on Threads at Always Be Booked. It's B with 2 bumblebees, or Always Be ebooked, as some people think it is, but it's not. It's Always Be Booked. But I never shut up on there, so you're gonna have like so many things in your feeds if you follow me there. For a warning, Instagram, same handle. TikTok for now is Nenia Campbell. I'm also on Lemonade and Blue Sky as Nenia Campbell as well.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. It's so fun to talk to you and to meet you. Yeah, I cannot wait to see to read your new books, and also your old books, which I haven't read yet. So I'm definitely, gonna grab some of them for some upcoming plane rides that I have coming up.
I mean, I have many copies, so just
I
ask.
I will hit you up.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, it's really lovely to finally like meet you. And I also look forward to reading everything you write.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I hope you have a great evening.
Enjoy that California weather. We'll be enviously shivering jealous. Here.
Yeah.
Yes, and stay warm.
Will do. Okay, bye-bye. Wow, that was such a cool interview. Nenia is such an amazing person. Really cool to hear her perspectives on both the movie Jennifer's Body and also just her experience as an author and her inspiration.
Yeah, she is literally the coolest person.
Thanks for bringing her on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm such a fan of her books, and she's a wonderful, delightful human being.
Yeah, well, as always, thank you so much for tuning in to Horror/Stories. We're really grateful for you if you are listening. And yeah, if you have anything you'd like us to talk about, or if you have any thoughts on movies that we've watched or perspectives that you want to add, please do hit us up. We really appreciate the comments and the feedback.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap up the Possession season pretty soon. There are 2 more movies I want to watch and discuss with Maddie, and that would be the Korean movie The Wailing, and also the movie The Taking of Deborah Logan, which I know covers Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yeah, that's like a whole another type of possession, or I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So
metaphor,
those, and that's something that we've kind of dealt with our grandparents.
And I think many people have that experience, and it'll be really interesting to talk about that. Well, that's a wrap on the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Horror/Stories. We really appreciate you being here as a listener.
We would be so appreciative if you would like, share, subscribe to this show. You can follow us on Instagram at horror/stories / is spelled out _pod. And if you want to be on the show and talk to us, we'd love to talk to you, and you can fill out a Google form.
And also, if there's any movies that you'd like us to watch and discuss, please let us know. We appreciate your suggestions. You can either comment on one of our posts, or you can DM us at horror / spelled out stories _pod.
Thank you again. Love you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Horror/Stories. We'd love it. We'd be so happy. Jesus Christ. What does people say? How did normal people talk when they say words?
Okay. I got one.
Okay.
Should I go for it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Horror/Stories. We really appreciate you as a listener, and we hope that you are enjoying our content. Please let us know what you think.
Like, share, subscribe.
And if there's any movies that you would like us to watch and discuss, please let us know in the comments or by DMing us.
And you can follow us on Instagram
at horror/stories pod. Is that it?
I don't fucking know.
Oh my gosh.
You were so professional, and I'm just like, I don't know. I have to go on Instagram to find our handle. Horror/stories _pod on Instagram.
Yeah. Should we do it one more time?
Yeah.
Okay.